From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet from beautiful Aspen, Colorado. I'm here for the Nexus conference and ran into Patrick Byrne, the founder of Overstock.com, founded in 1999, a long time ago, and he was one of the first big companies, it's a multi-$100 million company to start accepting Bitcoin. And very happy to run into you. And I got to ask you though, how did you become a voluntarist?
Jeff, good to be on, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I've always been a voluntarist. I grew up basically Vermont and New Hampshire, and to me that was, I mean, it just seems obvious that people own themselves and that things should be voluntary between them. And when people say otherwise, I always sort of wanted to ask what got the government in that business or that business, or where was that? So I was interested in the Constitution and came to understand the design of the Constitution pretty well, I thought, and then saw the ways that it has been eroded by politics and bad judicial thinking over the last century or so.
That's great. And you founded Overstock.com in 1999. Tell us a little bit about that and how it sort of relates to how you conduct your business related to your philosophy on freedom as well. Okay,
well, it was kind of funny because we had there's this corner of retail that most people don't know about, and it's called jobbing, and it tends to be bada bing, bada boom kind of guys. I know a guy who knows a guy who's got a truckload of Titleist golf clubs, good for 40% back from wholesale, offer good for 10 minutes. It's this wheeler dealer edge of retail. And in the early days of the internet, I knew that no one had done this in 1999. So I basically said, let's start a company that'll do this. And it was in a day when anyone could raise capital. People were dropping out of business school, and with a one-page business plan, they'd raise like $100 million on a pet food company or something.
Sounds like an ICO.
Yeah. So, well, I'm sure we'll get to that. So I thought I had this great business plan. I took it around the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. It was turned down by 85 VCs. Never got any VC money. Started on a shoestring.
That was probably lucky in the end.
Yeah, well, probably was. And then this funny thing happened. The dot-com collapse. So this is all getting to this question of freedom and such. The dot-com collapse. And we found ourselves that the system we had built for jobbing worked really well on bankruptcies. And we liquidated 19 companies that had been funded by all these VCs who had turned us down for money. I'm much too mature to take any undue satisfaction from that. And I was once being interviewed about it, Chris Cuomo on ABC. Actually, Doonesbury did a series on us called myvulture.com, and it was a copy of me. And then Chris Cuomo on ABC 2020 was doing this interview. He said, how do you feel about making money off the distress of other businesses? And I told him, the first rule of business is, if you're not going to kick a man when he's down, when are you going to kick him? So that was a long-winded answer to your question, but
that's good. Yeah, and you don't know about me, but I actually had an internet company back in the 90s as well, and it was worth $240 million at the peak, and a few months later it was almost worthless. And then I read actually the book from The Creature from Jekyll Island by J.R. Griffin, who's here at the conference.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's how central banks work. That's how they create these bubbles. I was like, why didn't someone tell me about this before? So I ended up actually doing a lot of the stuff I do today afterwards because I had to learn about how all of these things work, central banks and governments and things like that. But one interesting thing about you is your involvement in Bitcoin. You've been, a big proponent of it. I heard you here speaking at the conference about Bitcoin. Why are you so passionate about Bitcoin?
Well, I consider myself pro-liberty. I'm pro-liberty, as much should be voluntary as possible. You will challenge me, I'm sure, on how big a spread there is.
How it works, yeah, that's a whole other story. But as long as you think that's the way we should always be working towards, right?
Yeah, it's the North Star.
Right.
It's the North Star. And it's just a question of how do you maximize that.
Right.
So I've always been pro-liberty. I did a PhD in philosophy down at Stanford. And and I really got into. That's when I came to understand how bad, frankly, the thinking of let's say John Rawls, God bless him, now deceased, great philosopher, but at the end of the day, and that thinking has had such a pernicious effect on society over the last 40 odd years. So, and it just again sharpened my sort of self-ownership principles. So anyway, it's almost hard to describe how could someone not be see the world this way. It seems so reality-based. It's like, when did you start seeing this grass as green? It's like, well, I don't know. You always saw it as green. So how do you ever not see the world as a place where people should own themselves?
Well, I don't know if you ever saw this. I think it was Peter Schiff, or it was somebody anyway. And they went down to Occupy Wall Street, and they asked one of these sort of like Marxist types, sort of like a millennial college student who's obviously not very smart. Anyway, a whole other story. But they asked the kid, they go, so who owns you? And it took him like a minute to come up with an answer. And here was his answer. He finally goes, oh, I got it. And he goes, the government and my parents. So the government schools are doing their job of indoctrinating people and confusing them and not making them very bright. But
although
yeah,
I must mention,
obvious, right?
As much as we may laugh at Occupy Wall Street got hijacked.
Oh, I totally didn't know. Yeah,
by a bunch of real crazy, let's endorse the Albanian Communist Party type guys.
Right.
But the original inspiration of Occupy Wall Street matches up with my view of the world. 14 years ago, I started, so I was a public company CEO, and we went public in 2002. I was out there in the mix, and you mix it up with hedge funds and prime brokers and bankers, analysts, regulators, and I started smelling skunk. And I started talking publicly. There's like the fixed in, there's this crap going on here, and the regulators seem to be asleep at the switch. We think that they're protecting us, but they're all bought off. And when I said that in 2005, the New York Post ran photos of me with a UFO coming out of my head, because crazy to suggest that the SEC is in bed with Wall Street. So
that's crazy. That's obvious.
Well, it wasn't then. Everyone back then thought I was like some weird conspiracy theory, and I was like, no, there's this term in economics. George Stigler won a Nobel Prize for this stuff, the theory of regulatory capture, in 1971. So these Occupy Wall Street guys, there's a few underneath these, let's say outsider movements, of which more and more of us are part. There are some shared insights, and that's one of them, that of the dangers of crony capitalism. And in our case, in France, when everything melted down, the state came in and took over the banks. In 2008, when everything melted down, the banks took over the state.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I wasn't saying Occupy Wall Street's all bad, but that's where I saw this interview with this one young college student, and that blew my mind when he said he was owned by the government and his parents. But you never really got around to why you're passionate about Bitcoin.
Well, we need a form. Money, to me, is a medium through which we communicate information about two things: value and scarcity. That's what prices are. They're packets of information about value and scarcity. As we live with fiat money, it means we're communicating to each other through a field, through a medium that is owned by the state and subject to distortion by the state to serve its own interests, or to serve the interests of, really, actually, it all benefits the wealthy, central banking. So I would like there to be a way we can communicate, and so they can twist, these government mandarins twist these dials, thinking they're managing our economy, but of course driving us off bigger and bigger cliffs. How great it would be to have a way to communicate. Gold would be a great way. Gold's been increasing at a stock of about 2% per year for 5,000 years. This is mankind's supply of gold. Gold would be great, but we can't beam it through a modern economy. We can't turn it into photons. So Bitcoin is, as South Park got it, it's the first form of money that can beam across the galaxy.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people still don't realize what is so great about, or what's so powerful about Bitcoin is whenever you have data, you can obviously copy that data, right? And so if you've got a song or a music track, you can just copy it and give it to your friends. Bitcoin solved the problem of how do you have data that if I give it to you, I don't have it anymore. That's really what Bitcoin solves. So I heard you I came in late to your speech, but it sounds like you're working on some things related to Bitcoin and helping out. I didn't fully hear the full speech, but what were you talking about here at the conference?
Well, we've had, so Overstock, which is this company I founded and run, has a venture called Medici Ventures, which it just focuses on blockchain and Bitcoin type investments. Medici Ventures has a subsidiary that is called T0, and it's where blockchain meets Wall Street. We're creating a blockchain version of Wall Street, where all the functions that occur in Wall Street can occur in a blockchain system, which does two things. It drops the cost in 90% of the friction costs. And secondly, all kinds of mischief that goes on Wall Street that I showed in my speech, I documented with some court cases, these things that had gone on become impossible in a blockchain-based capital market. So imagine a version of Wall Street where all this mischief that we know keeps bubbling with delight over and over and over actually becomes impossible in the first place. So we're working in that area, and I walked through one application of what we're doing within Wall Street. So just giving them an idea of how disruptive this is going to be.
Yeah, the entire blockchain evolution, as I call it, is disrupting so many different markets, and it's great. A lot of them need disrupting.
Yeah, but remember, these things that are getting disrupted, all these institutions, corporate or government, they all have their own, the fix is in many ways, and they have their own regulators on speed dial. They have their own senators on speed dial. They're going to call up and try to convince government to fight guys like us to keep us from disrupting. Well, and this is really a chance for the U.S. government, I feel, to show some leadership. And, they were made to look like fools by Wall Street in the last decade. And this is a chance for them not to knuckle under.
We'll see. I don't have much hope for government to ever do anything right. But
hope springs eternal. I guess I'm an Irishman, hope springs eternal.
Well, that's why I like a lot of this blockchain technology, because essentially it's creating new systems that just make the old systems obsolete. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin makes the central banks obsolete. There's just there was never a need for a central bank. Central banks are nothing but nefarious scams that impoverish people and enrich the elite, right?
Yes.
So Bitcoin, a lot of people, especially in the old days, a lot of the sort of anarchist types, they would say, well, we're going to have to go in and kill all the government people at some point, right, to end all this. Now you don't really have to. And that's actually a beautiful thing, because the true voluntarist message is you shouldn't be using violence against others unless they're using it against you. So the fact that this is an evolution, especially in Bitcoin related, that not one shot is fired, and it actually could end up toppling central banks and government.
We just check out.
Yeah.
We just slowly check out more and more of the fiat system into the blockchain-based system. Yep. And as that happens, we don't have to fight anymore about these institutions and how corrupt they are and how to regulate them and how to fix them. They all just become obsolete.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's going on.
Isn't that funny? I was talking there also about development. The advice we've been giving the third world, so-called third world, less developed world, is for years has been to look at the institutions we built, banks and treasuries and such, and you build your own versions and try to catch up that way. And what the blockchain does is let them completely end run that and skip that whole, skip decades of development in terms of especially developing a financial system, banking and capital markets. We're going to have all of that by the end of this. Well, we have a wonderful blockchain-based version of Wall Street ready, commercial, it's in production, people are doing trades, and we'll have more blockchain replacements for classic institutions as sort of the year rolls on.
Is there a place that people could go to find out more information on what you're developing?
Medici Venturescom. Is there a website there with some explanation?
Yep.
MediciVentures.com.
That's great. We'll put that in the links down below so people can check it out. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to let people know?
Tell me, so you're speaking to the way my mental paradigm is that there are the people who believe in the minimal state defined in the U.S. Constitution, call those classical liberals. Libertarians think that even that is too much state, and they want to slightly reduce state from that. So, for example, one difference being classical liberals believe that the state can be strong enough to regulate monopolies, and our Constitution mentions that. But a libertarian denies that. An anarchist takes a step further than a libertarian, as I understand it. Walk me through the distinctions in your mind.
Sure. You know, words can get so skewed, and people use them in different ways, and so my definition might not be the way other people use it. Here's how I use it, though. Libertarian to me means that your most basic fundamental principle is freedom, is liberty. To me, if that's the case, then you have to be an anarchist, because that is the most largest form of freedom, because any form of government is a form of enslavement. Because if it's not voluntary, if you have a government, I don't care where it is or how big it is, if it's more than 2 people and they come in and they go, we're your government, you owe us money, that's a criminal act, and that is not freedom whatsoever. Now,
but can you imagine a group of us on a island, state of nature, we're shipwrecked, we got to survive. We have to whack up duties. Do you envision that at some point we say, let's elect, this is what the Dutch did, not we're going to make some Leviathan monarch, but we're just going to select one person to be like the mayor, first among equals, just first but to get this stuff organized, so it isn't everything is in a goddamn committee. So do you not envision that humans would do that? And that's
absolutely. They'd self-organize as long as it's voluntary, right? So if we're on the island and there's 6 of us and we all decide, hey, things will get done better if we just nominate this guy for a year, and he's going to decide when we have a dispute who's right. And if everyone goes, I'm in, then that's fine, right? That's just humans deciding better ways of organizing themselves. That's totally fine. That's one of the things that a lot of people get confused about with anarchy, is they think it's complete chaos. It doesn't have to be at all. And in fact, that's why I also say I'm an anarcho-capitalist, because really the market provides all of these solutions, and you've probably seen that in many ways. As Bitcoin itself is getting rid of all the fraud and things like that, because it's the actual setup is so transparent, but that's done without any violence used against anyone.
Can I further question you on this?
Sure. I guess you're interviewing me now, but that's fine.
Well, what is if those people on that island self-organized and formed this compact that they all agreed to, then one could imagine that they're going to have children, and those children will have children, and so on and so forth. What happens when years later those 6th, 7th generation children start saying, gee, we want a system, why are we dragged down by this set of rules? We want everything to be just voluntary. Wouldn't they be missing the fact that they are actually in a system that was formed by compact? They're just succeeding generations. And if you recognize that, isn't the same true for the United States?
No, that's a massive criminal act, in my opinion, to bring a human being into this world and say, you're now under, these people own you, and they can take your money. You know, that's the nefariousness of government, that people will actually enslave their own children and actually feel good about it. And then the whole socialism aspect of it all comes in, where you actually have people in the U.S. today who are living off what I call socialist insecurity, social security, who are literally robbing their own children to have a nice lifestyle. Now, what parent would do that if they actually saw they were actually doing that? Not many parents would really literally rob their own children, like take money out of their room just so they could go eat at a restaurant and stuff. Not many people do that.
Through the mechanism of the state.
Through the mechanism of the state, it gets, yeah, that's right. So it's incredibly
I agree
nefarious.
with you. The whole social welfare state has unfortunately turned into a mechanism. Shouldn't laugh, but it's a mechanism where the past has robbed the future, has robbed you folks, frankly.
It's not robbing me because I don't pay tax.
Okay.
But
well, earmuffs. You know, it's a fact that if you're 65 years old today, you can expect to live $70,000 better off over the course of your life due to Social Security. If you're...
Which is a Ponzi scheme.
Which is right. But if you're 22 today, graduating from college, you will live $430,000 less well off over your life because of those systems. So those systems, you have an extra $430,000 going to be taken out of your lifetime earnings, that system. So that's just, it's become an extraction mechanism.
Absolutely. And you look at the U.S. Debt right now, it's just past $20 trillion. When you add up the debt and liabilities of everything, it's over $100 trillion, which works out to $250,000 for every person in the U.S. So a newborn baby in the U.S. today has $250,000 of U.S. federal government debt and liabilities overhanging it that is supposed to pay for it, which is a massive criminal act against that baby.
I agree. So we're good with all that. So we're good with all that. That it's the question is, when I hear the difference between a libertarian and an anarchist,
most people think they're the same thing. A lot of people will say, because there's a Libertarian Party, so there's what a lot of people say is little L and big L. Big L means Libertarian Party, which means you associate with the political activities of the Libertarian Party, which is not completely libertarian. Small L libertarian, a lot of people call themselves minarchists, which, constitutionalists, people who believe, oh, it should just be a constitution, which by the Russia, China, they all have the same constitution as the U.S. Not that the U.S. listens to its constitution anymore. Anyway, just this piece of paper. It's all imaginary. It's all illusory. It's all for control and enslavement of human beings. And government doesn't actually even really exist. That's the crazy part, right? The word govern, to control, meant. I live in Mexico. Mente is mind. It's mind control. You can't point to what government is. It's a belief that these people have authority over you. And that's it. And as long as people just go along with that brainwashing, the mind control, it just carries on. But if people ever wake up, hopefully one day, it just goes away. Because there's nothing government does that the market can't do. What does the government even do anymore that helps anyone? They indoctrinate the children. They got them in 12 years of government indoctrination camps. That's not helping those kids. They're robbing the children with the socialist insecurity. What does government? Well, they do wars. Do we all want wars? I don't want any wars. I don't even know what a government do that anyone would even want. Can you think of anything? I can't think of anything. So yeah,
well,
just
I
get rid of the whole
actually
thing.
think, if you're talking not in the abstract, but in terms of the U.S. context, I can think of why you would want a federal government. And there's a list of things that it can do that you really can't do at the state or the individual level,
like
such as buying, regulating commerce among the several states.
You don't need to regulate commerce.
Well, to keep
the market regulates itself.
No, you have to keep the states from each state creating its own special tariff system, and so that was all moved to the Fed, so they would keep it flat.
Well, you say you need a federal government because the state governments are so bad.
That you need to keep.
We'll get rid of the state governments then.
Well, okay.
Commerce doesn't need to be regulated.
Secondly, well, there's a list. It's called Article 1, Section 8. Is the list of the things that at least our founding fathers said.
Founding fathers. That sounds so cultish.
Okay, that you could do at the federal level.
Founding fathers?
National security,
national security. You know what national security is? There's 300 million guns in the U.S. That's your national security. Who's going to come in here? The Chinese government's going to come in here and force everyone to pay Chinese tax. They'll all be shot within minutes. That's your national security. The military is just a criminal terrorist organization that the elites use to take over resources. It's the Department of Offense, not Department of Defense. And they based it on the Pentagon, the pentagram, I call it.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Oh, well, so nice. No answer to that one. I'll let that one slide. Thank you for having me on. I look forward to reviewing your broadcast.
Yeah, thank you. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. It's been fun to have Patrick on. Interesting conversation here. And check out overstock.com. Check out his new blockchain sort of stuff. It's at Medici Venturescom. We'll have it in the links down below. And that's it for Anarchast from Aspen, Colorado. That's it. Peace, love, and anarchy.
In a world where Antifa riots in the city streets, cops rage out of control, and the leader of the free world is a fat-ass casino owner, one event stands alone: to make Anarchy, great again.
I actually love humanity. That is why I'm an anarchist.
Backwards in the building like we the ceiling, we illin'. No matter who find it appealing, I'm here and I got a feeling that we'll be dealing a lot of pain with a penicillin get drilled in your head. That we are monsters and yeah, we come from the slums and for months we've been pumped, but for once I am now comfortable. I want to grow, I want some more success, and I want to know that greatness can't be rushed, can't be lost, so face the fuss. Feel free to hate on us, we lace them up. Dudes, we done paid them up. Keep snakes away from us and safe from us, you might wanna be. Remember when clowns used to make fun of me and now they wanna be me. See me and they run at me, I'm gonna be the greatest, yeah I wanna be, but I am not the one to be the fakest for the sake of being played. I'm here, like I never left, set to hell. Nah, cause I can't just fail, so just prepare your ears, it'll get for real. Okay, from here, we will never take the sale, it's grind time. My mind and my thoughts, my highs and my faults, my wins and my loss. When will I fall off? It's a test for me. You are now listening to Veracity. Yeah.
Fuck the media, fuck the banks, fuck drone strikes, fuck tanks, fuck hunger, fuck war, fuck ignoring of the poor, fuck the left, fuck the right, fuck the government. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.